Okay, started. Okay, we are ready to go. You ready?
Ready?
Yeah, let me just make sure this is connected to your slides. Okay, well, we'll get started then. Is it on? Yeah. So the camera is ready? Because it says Charla mute. Oh, okay. Okay. I don't see myself on here, but I guess I'm here. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Cherilyn Yazzie, and we're presenting here at ASU at the stadium. And you might hear planes go by, and I'll try to make sure I speak up. My husband is Michael Hester, and we are both farmers at Coffee Pot Farms in Dilkon on the Navajo Nation. Okay, I did it. So one of the things about our farm is, when we really were thinking about our mission statement, we want to be able to grow good quality vegetables, things that have a lot of nutrients in them. Because when we look at it, sometimes at our grocery stores, we don't get those kind of options. We don't get a lot of options, when we get to our bashes or to even the gas stations, where sometimes that's where our vegetables are. And so we want to be able to grow very good vegetables and for our Navajo families, because we want to inspire them to be healthy, so they're feeling connected from their ancestors to their descendants, because we need to make sure that we as Navajo people, Native people, all people are healthy, so that way we can continue to share all of our Navajo history, our songs, all of those prayers. They need to happen. But in order for that to take place, we have to be healthy in our bodies and in our spirits. So some of the other, our team members on a farm is, our chickens. They lay our eggs. I have lots of chickens. I don't have names for all of them, but, I love chickens. They're, they have their own personality, and, they're just a fun little, animal and bird to have. We also have our farm dogs, and, those dogs that we got, they're supposed to be taking care of our chickens, but sometimes they end up just sleeping in and they don't really work. But one of the most hardworking tool on our farm is our water truck, a 1994 truck called the truck Big Red. And so with this truck all last year, it helped us to grow 12,000 pounds of produce on a half acre. And so we hauled everything for the birds, the dogs, for the plants. All that water came into the farm just for us to be able to provide food for, our community. And I know, like a lot of things with the pandemic, we experienced a lot of hardships. However, during this time back in 2020, we used that opportunity to really start thinking about what this word that was happening, this buzzword that I've heard, called a pivot. How do you pivot your business? What does that look like? And when March hit and there was April, we had eggs, we had spinach, and then we also had kale. And so with just those three items, one of the things we decided to do is just put that simple box together. And then we just put it out there on social media, let people know. And then we got a few people letting us know that they wanted that produce. And then as time progressed, we were able to grow more things. And that kind of started out, the community supported agriculture box. The other thing that we did is we got lucky to be chosen to be a part of an accelerator program that is under the Empower by GoDaddy. And each week from January all the way into May, with other entrepreneurs in Arizona, we met every week. And what they did is, they really talked a lot about, how you find finances or capital, your record keeping, your budgeting, your accounting, your bookkeeping, finding new markets, how to understand your customers. Those were some of the things that, as new entrepreneurs, especially in this space of farming, it really, really, really helped us to just organize ourselves and our business. And, out of that came a very good project, which we were able to be featured on small documentary called Made in America. And that's a very good story about how we as farmers are trying to help our community, but also how it is to have a business during this pandemic. And so I'm very proud of that project. And the other piece that I'm very proud of is that out of that, we were able to have a website. We have a website now, so our customers can find us. I'm very proud of like some of the marketing that I learned, because I've learned you have to be out there. You have to have people know where you're at, where you are. And as Navajo people or Native people, they're always telling us, don't talk too much about yourself. You're not supposed to do that. And that was kind of conflicting. I was like, okay. And so that was something new to me, but that's the other piece, that you have to really start to tell your customers where you are, who you are, what your values are, and that's how they find you. And especially during the pandemic, when nobody was, communicating face to face, you couldn't be out in public. And so on the internet, okay, we had to do that. And so that's something that was really, I'm going to say it was challenging, but it was also fun to do. And I'm still learning a lot about marketing. So some of the services that our little farm in Dilkon provides is, like I said, we pivoted and we're really focusing on a community supported agriculture. Last year, we had over 50 CSA members, and we were able to work with some Hopi CSA members in the fall. We had some senior centers in the Winslow Ag Council. We delivered boxes to them, and then some of them were local. And so, my goal is to make sure that we increase those year after year. The other thing we've done is we've attended farmers markets on Navajo during COVID. Everything, when it shut down, we didn't have any access to our flea markets. That's where a lot of us gathered to sell a lot of our, things, and food, where we gathered just to meet each other and talk with each other, and get updates. So we were lucky last year, or back in 2020, when Winslow was able to do one of its farmers markets. So we're going to still continue to do those, because we still want to have access to customers. The other thing that we're seeing is that we want to be able to partner with our local restaurants, especially in Winslow. We want to be able to provide them fresh local produce, and they're wanting all of this. They really want anything that's local, and they're like, name your price and we will, we want to be able to have that in our restaurant. One of the other things is having farm tours, because I know we're kind of unique in how we're doing this. One of the things is our farm is on this acre, and we have no electricity or running water. So our farm is all solar. So everything we try to do, all our electricity is solar. And then Mike, my husband, he hauls in all the water for all the plants. And so that is challenging, but that is the reality of how, as Native people, especially where I'm coming from, I can't speak to other tribes, but for us on Navajo, we don't have the infrastructure to do what we want to do. And when those numbers for COVID came out, that there was 30% of Navajos who don't have access to water, in my head, from my perspective, I see that the 30% are actually the food producers on the outside, whereas in your community, there are water infrastructure, but as you go further out, okay, that's where your food producers, your sheep herders, your ranchers, your farmers, that's where the water needs to be. And so that's how I view it. The other thing that in getting into this work, we're trying to do a little bit more of advocacy for farmers. Because my background is a little bit of social work and in public health. And I know in public health, policy, system, environment changes, those are very crucial for us to change this. And this is a very good opportunity. Food access, food insecurity, all of those things. This is a very good time to do that. And everybody knows here, that the pandemic showed us all of that. And it's right in our face. And we know what we need to be working on now. And so this PowerPoint, it really bothers me because when we look at the agricultural census data, we see that in Arizona, 60% of our food producers are Native people. And so this number, about 19,000 of them are Native farmers. On Navajo, 12,000 of those farmers, they receive about $2,500 from the food that they produce. And that means, we are sustenance farmers. However, when we look at that and I see the numbers of high diabetes, all of these chronic diseases, and I ask, well, why, if we have the largest group of farmers, ranchers, producers, why do we have these health problems? Why is it like that? And so this bothers me a lot. And a lot of the questions of why we started doing this, Mike and I, is just asking that question, why? Why is nobody listening to us? Why is there barriers the way they are? And we know what it is. I mean, I think we do. So when we talk about food sovereignty, and it really is about taking that responsibility. You have to take that responsibility serious, and not one person can do that. And so some of the questions I've asked is like, well, if we take that responsibility and we really take it seriously, what is that going to look like? What is it going to show us? Because when I look at, are we food sovereign on the Navajo Nation? And I look at my numbers for, chronic diseases, and I look at, how much, or our lack of water, our lack of land. I say the question is, we don't have that food sovereignty. If we were to actually see something come of this, it would be, getting resources, the funding for it. So one of the examples is, I feel like there's a tie-up in a lot of the policy, the way the paperwork, the legal paperwork is held or not held, or we don't understand how to navigate that. And so that holds us back from not applying for like the USDA EQIP programs, for grants, and then not having that access to the land and water right away. It takes a long time just to withdraw land. If we're here in the city in Phoenix, if we wanted to buy some land and we had the money, you could easily get that land in less than a month. But back at home, if you're Native, how long does it take you? We don't know. Because we don't know, it takes a long time. It took almost 6 years for where we're at Coffee Pot Farms, for just this one little acre to be transferred over into my name. It took 6 years for that to happen. And, down the road from us, a mile down the road, I have this old cornfield that my paternal grandparents, they use. And to get the agricultural land use permit, they gave us permission, but I don't need the permission. I need the legal paperwork that says I will take care of it. I will be responsible for it. And then I can turn around and ask for a loan, or I can ask for, additional money for it. That doesn't happen because, there's another federal layer that says, well, we're not gonna, we need some time to figure out how we're gonna navigate all this, figure out how we're going to navigate and make sure that everybody gets this land, or how we're going to do this. And so those are some of the things that I see. The other thing that I know that has been brought up is like having a comprehensive long-term educational ag program, because I know the climate is different. And so we have to grow in different ways. I know for us, because of our limited space, Mike and I, we decided to become market farmers. And so that means growing in small spaces that you're efficient. Okay, in my 50-foot bed, I'm going to grow lettuce. And in that bed, I need to know how much lettuce I can put there, and how much, when it's harvest time, how much I can take out and will go to the customer. So you're being very efficient with your resources, and especially with your time when you're just two people. The other thing is, really stop seeing ourselves as competitors, because, as a farmer, rancher, or sheep herder, in your community back at home, you have many people that you can feed. And so this shouldn't be a competition. We should be figuring out how to partner with each other. Went too far. So some of the ways that for me at Coffee Pot Farms, oh, hold on, excuse me, it says the battery's running low up here. One of the ways that I want to look at this is how to build and practice a culture of trust. I want to be able to, with the individuals that I work with, that I partner with, I really want to have that trust. I want to be able to trust you. If you ask me to do something, I will do it, vice versa. Because, there's many people that we're going to have to feed. And, that needs to be one of the biggest things that we need, that I want to be able to do. I revisit why we're doing what we're doing, and we reach agreements with each other about how we're going to do food access, how we're going to do food security, and to use the love of eating food, right, to build this community with each other that goes across racial lines. And so, one of the things that I am, most proud of is that, Mike and I, we are not farmers at all. One of the things is his community where he grew up is here in Phoenix. And, one of the things he says, the only thing I knew how to grow was algae. That's it. So this can be done. Growing food is possible, and it's a very empowering feeling. And, I encourage you, even for yourself, grow something. That's your sovereignty. You're in control of that little piece. No matter how small it is, you will be the one that's controlling that. And the government will not be able to tell you, you can't do that because it's not food safety, So that's one of the things that I would say is, look at that. We just started, and our business, actually filing it, we did that back in 2018. And it did take a lot of work, and it took a lot of time being on the internet to learn what such and such was, the financing, the taxes, that's just part of it. Learning how to find where your customers are at, that's just part of it. And one of the things that I thought was good about that plan that Adrian Udarby brought up was that, there's a big piece in there about reconnecting with the earth, our resources, and protecting them, because they don't have those voices for themselves. The animals don't, but that's why we're here. And I know as Native people, that's part of who we are. That's how we grew up. It's in our songs, our prayers, and that's It's just what we do. So one of the other goals is to surround coffee pot farms with the best that we can, to do the best for each other. So with COVID, I see that the native food producers can be a pivotal role here, because there's that 60% of us are food, have some type of product that we could put out there. And today and tomorrow, you'll probably hear about where those gaps are. If we could do that, what would that look like? And so one of the things that I saw that COVID taught us is we have to be very strategic. There's strategy in everything that we're doing that we have to do. And then we have to build lasting relationships with each other, because that's the only way that this will happen. Some of the places that we found inspiration was from our customers. We talk to everybody, wherever we go, we talk to them. And our customers would tell us, well, this is what I did with this produce. I made this, they put it on the internet. I'm like, oh my God, I never thought about making that kimchi with this, And so that's really fun for me, because it excites me. And it's like, okay, well, I want to try growing this. I want to do this. Talking with farmers, learning how we grew is not something that's traditional. Okay, it's something else that we found from outside, from non-native people. And because there was no way I was going to learn how to grow straight rows, very efficiently. But these other farmers taught us how to use tools that will help us to grow efficiently, be efficient. Talking with government officials that care, because a lot of them don't, but you'll find some that care, and you want to, really talk to them, because they inspire us to find new ways to keep advocating. And then the other piece is just, learning to be at the table together. So one of the things that we're doing is how we're improving is, I really feel it's important to have a good relationship and understanding of money, how to use money as a tool, because we talk about sustainability. That money might go away. I don't know, with the way the economy is going, we have to have a relationship with it. And there is money out there for us to build our infrastructure. Okay. So how do we use that and bring it to our place of farming, of food producing, and we use it so that it can be sustainable if things go away. And just, again, like I said, having better partnerships, believing in each other. And am I good on time? Good. All right. So we'll leave the Q&A for at the end. So go ahead.
Just change over these screens really quickly, and then we can get started with Blue's presentation. Should be able to use the clicker. Excuse me. Hi, everybody. My name is Bleu Adams. I am Mandan Haratsa Dine. My family is from North Dakota, Fort Berthold. My father and my mother's family is from Cross Canyon, Arizona, which is between Window Rock and Ganado. So we're pretty near the capital of the Navajo Nation. I had the opportunity to grow up within both communities and have had a lifetime of teaching from my relatives and my grandparents, and that's influenced a lot of the work that I've come to do in my life. A little bit of my background. I'm a serial entrepreneur. I've opened up 5 different restaurants. have worked with food since I can remember. It was one of my earliest memories was selling burritos with a little blue cooler, and just grew from there, learning business practices from my parents and always keeping an Indigenous viewpoint within those practices. So I came to a point where many of my restaurants were providing food, but it was out of the reach of my own community. And that pushed me to actually sell my restaurant and start doing work regarding food access within our communities. So appreciate being invited here today. And I want to talk a little bit about how specifically the Navajo Nation, because I know this reverberates with other Indigenous communities, how we got here to the point. And I don't call it a food desert. I call it a food apartheid, because that put it into context that this was a direct result of legislation by the United States government. So that's really important because then we can understand the history of how we got to this point. The scorched earth policy of 1864 lasted about 4 years. They wanted to disconnect us from our land. We had a very circular relationship with our land, our environment. We were very protective of it. It was our mother. And in order to basically submit us, they disconnected us from our traditional food system, destroyed our livestock, and that began what's called the Long Walk, which was a walk to Bosque Redondo, which was a concentration camp in New Mexico. After the 4 years, we were allowed to return when the Treaty of 1868 was created, and I have sovereign in quotations because we're only sovereign on paper. 100 years later, we're also fighting now with mineral extraction. And that, of course, is another reason why we struggle with access to water. One example is Body Coal Mine has extracted 45 billion gallons of water over the course of their company. And a lot of the, some of the members of the company CEO were politicians of Arizona. So we need to understand why we're in this situation, and that we can't repeat this. This has to change. So that brings us to the present day. The Navajo Nation is the site of West Virginia, approximately 174,000 permanent residents, over 300,000 enrolled members. And I know Cherilyn spoke to the 30% without running water, lack of electricity, but their biggest concern are for that size and population, we have 13 grocery stores. So the consequences of that, not having access to healthy food means we have to rely on prepackaged and processed foods. A lot of high fructose corn syrup, which we know is really devastating, especially for people that haven't really had access or built the immunities to some of these foods. So limited access to fresh food, reliance on prepackaged and processed, and that ties into our health disparities, amount of diabetes, cancer rates, etc. And then we find for every dollar spent on food, we're spending $2 on healthcare, which is a huge strain on our economy. Diabetes is the 4th leading cause of death for Indigenous communities. So, we know the problems. What are the solutions? We need to focus on localized regenerative food production. That means supporting farms, Indigenous farmers, incorporating techniques that improve the overall health of the ecosystem. Because of the mineral extraction, a lot of our lands are polluted with radiation, uranium. We need to do a lot of soil testing for the water. And because the Peabody coal mine has use so much water. They use that pristine water to slurry. That's what they did with it. They mixed it with coal so they could send it down to Nevada. We've watched our water table complete all over our nation, and it's starting natural arsenic, and it's becoming really toxic to us. So we need to work on systems that can heal the soil and heal the water. And we can do that by using organic fertilizer, using all of these different crop rotation, rotational grazing, permaculture, and companion planting. All of these are farming techniques anyway. So recognizing that we have the ability to heal the soil and heal the water is a very important thing. So establishing a localized food system, healthy food production provides healthy nutrition. I believe a healthy economy starts with nutrition. We need the ability to produce that myelin that is essential for innovation and creative thinking. Otherwise, we're stuck in a survival. And that's where I believe a lot of our people are at now. So we start with nutrition, and then we can work on rebuilding our economies through food. Creating a circular and regenerative system, thinking about ideas like the waste becomes feedstock for another growing cycle. That's another tie into permaculture, or using farming byproducts to create fuels, there's technologies out there that it's more of a circular model. Okay, so being from the restaurant industry, there's a holistic method of thinking that we need to apply by supporting farms like coffee pot farms, and also looking at the end. So we always use farm to table or that's a circular model. If we can get restaurants to source locally, design and market healthier food products for their menu.
Apologies, everyone.
Yes.
There's feedback. Yeah.
I think if you turn the sound off, I think it's just in this mode we can't really mute it. And you turn it all the way down. You know what we're gonna do? We're gonna do this. That'll stop it.
Oh,
no,
Maybe not.
Is it your computer picking up the sound?
I mean, unmuted.
Just gonna turn off sound completely. Where's this mouse? I'm so sorry for interrupting you.
I think. Oh, okay. Is that where?
We were here, right?
No,
Somewhere?
where we were.
Here?
Yes. Thank you.
Good to go now.
Thank you. So we need to get education in restaurants and the retail end of our food system as well. Sourcing and supporting local farms, designing and marketing healthier food for our menus, reducing our waste. I think the numbers say that about 1/3 of food produced globally is wasted, yet 10% of the population goes hungry. So that's a major concern, and a part where restaurants and retail facilities can look to reduce their waste. One of the ways we did it in our restaurant is we educated the public and our customers that we are going to run out of dishes, and this is why. Because we shoot for 0 to little waste. and they were understanding. It was part of our marketing, and they bought into it and they loved it, and they shared that message. So as consumers, that's something you can do, is to support restaurants that are looking into sustainable methods. No single-use products. We try to use metals or earthenware, and if you want sugar, it comes in a cute little thing. You don't get a paper of sugar. It's just little things like that we can do. And as consumers, if I go to a restaurant, I'll ask for a little thing of sugar rather than these packages. I won't take straws, etc. Just something I do in my daily life. Compostable to-go products are huge. We don't even do recyclable because only 30% of recyclable material actually becomes recycled. The rest goes to the landfill anyway. And for Navajo, where we don't have operating landfills right now, the border towns where we're already leaking billions of dollars in revenue to the border towns because we don't have enough economic or entrepreneurial activity on our reservation. The border town literally makes money from our garbage, and that just kills me. So compostable will break down within 90 days, and then we're protecting and healing our soil. So one of the things I realized very early on is I wanted to take all this education and knowledge I had learned from running restaurants and visiting restaurants and being a part of the culinary scene. I've worked with James Beard for the last about 8 years. I'm on the committee for the Black and Indigenous Food Fund. We've ended up distributing about 40 grants of $15,000 throughout the country. And the importance of that was many times the conversations would be like the application system to apply for a grant. The requirements were they needed an EIN or they needed a bank account. They don't have many. So that cut out about 90% of Indigenous food producers, food businesses. So James Beard listened and they changed the application process to accommodate food entrepreneurs that didn't have access to a bank. Navajo has 2 banks for that population, that size. So, and our physical addressing, many of us have a PO box. So we can't apply for an EIN most times, or we can't get licensing. There's just a lot of different red tape that exists in Indigenous communities that we need to consider if we're trying to give access to those communities. So education was huge. When you're a community that largely has ingested or only has access to processed food, there's a lot of salt and sugar content. It changes your palate. So you're not going to appreciate like fresh farm food because you can't taste the subtlety of those flavors. So retraining the palate is something that we strive to do by providing familiar foods with healthier ingredients. And also education around cooking. That's one of the biggest things that I learned. People don't know how to cook. This new generation didn't know how to cook because they were getting everything cooked from either fast food or in the market. So training them how to cook, and then training them how to cook in a commercial environment so we could foster that entrepreneurial spirit and get more food entrepreneurs interested in helping, again, support the farmers and the food growers. So this was our 2nd annual culinary boot camp. Our boot camps are open to any gender, any age. We've had anywhere from 6 years old to 50 years old attend. It's a 3-day intensive boot camp. And the most surprising thing to me was at the end of the boot camp on the 3rd day, they could invite their family and friends to have a 3-course dinner in a beautiful setting, and the students cooked all 3 courses. They cooked the entire meal, and these kids were at our boot camp for 3 days, having never set foot in a commercial kitchen, and they outperformed some of my teams that have been cooking their whole life. That speaks to what is possible when you create access and opportunity. So one of the things that Indigehub does is provide a commercial kitchen space. We're looking at providing commissary kitchens in different Indigenous communities. One of the things we lack in our communities is infrastructure, buildings to even do business in. It's very difficult to obtain, and then our real estate is often comparable to downtown Phoenix, downtown Salt Lake, and it's just unreasonable. And because of that, when buildings become available, the government will take them for office space. So it leaves very few buildings for entrepreneurial activity. We can address that with group economics, shared resources, shared spaces. Not only does it provide an opportunity for them to experience what it's like to run a restaurant, but it alleviates the burden of the build out and purchasing equipment, and it mitigates the risk you take as an entrepreneur. So Blackbird Brunch is one of the food concepts. We had 7 different chefs in this space, but then COVID hit, and we're on hiatus until we're positive that it won't negatively impact gathering again. So my plan for Indigehub, we're just putting together, trying to find resources, and we want to open source architectural plans, equipment plans, and kind of create a kit so other communities can take this idea and start an Indigehub in their community. And we'll offer support and education through that network. This was just some really cute pictures I saw. These are different, these are 2 chefs here with a speaker, Seth Damon. Here's a family that utilized the kitchen space, and here's a young man that was interested in learning some different skills and potentially becoming a chef. So that is the value that I believe Indigehub can provide. And that's my presentation.
Any questions online? Oh, so the questions, how did we get our name? So Coffee Pot Farms, we're located in Dilkon, and in Dilkon, when you drive through, there's these volcanic formations. And the one that's nearest to us, the top of that formation started to kind of crumble away, and it kind of looks, you know, like one of those old coffee pots, you know. So my dad called that formation Coffee Pot. And so when we're kind of coming up with the name of our business, that just kind of came out, and it sounded good and it sounded right. So we called it Coffee Pot Farms. So one of the things that I really did do is I went online and I researched other farmers who are doing this work. So like here in Phoenix, Eric with Steadfast Farms, you know, he's a market gardener. And what I was looking for is who out there is growing on a small piece of land and that is going to have similar goals and who I want to be like, right? And so that's what I was just looking for, anybody out there who could was going to do something, who was doing something similar that I wanted to do. And so part of it was just researching, just going online, YouTubing all kinds of, farmers, and just to see what they were doing. And some of them do offer classes like online, like master classes or online courses. And so it was just kind of stepping into that. And that really did help us to build our confidence. And yeah, I hope that helps. There's 3 people here. So we'll go 1, 2, 3.
I want to ask some questions about you mentioned the EIN. I don't remember what that stands for anymore, but you have to apply for a federal grant.
Yep.
And so you talked about these legal papers we need. Can you give me a little bit more depth in what the barriers are?
Very oftentimes it's a physical address. So there is a project called the Rural Addressing Project through, I believe, Google. Many of these homes and many of these entrepreneurs live maybe in their ancestral hogan or a home that's been passed down, but there's no street signs, there's no paved roads. You're just a dirt road 5 miles west past the 3rd tree, and there you see a tire. That's our address. And so when we are applying for these programs, and my experience, I was the chair of Native Women Entrepreneurs of Arizona, and we were invited into a meeting with the Holleran. And this was during when they were trying to distribute the PPP loans. Nobody qualified for them because they would not take a PO box. And that's just one example of the bureaucracy that doesn't account for how Indigenous communities are set up.
Can I ask a follow-up question?
Sure.
I like solving puzzles. So is that, do you know by chance, is that something that administratively the executive branch could change, or does it require a change of law?
I would say law. And then it's going to take, so one of the problems, there's not a lot of data collection happening because in the city, it's about an average of $13 per person to collect data. In Indigenous communities, that number is $50 per person. So there's not enough money, there's not enough real interest, and there's not enough awareness that these problems exist. So most of the time when we're invited into spaces, we spend 90% of the time educating and bringing people up to speed and then trying to address the problems. So advocacy right now is at the federal and state level is what we need.
Good questions. Next one.
You said that we experienced a food apartheid.
Yes.
As opposed to a food desert. Can you please elaborate on that?
It was an intentional act. We were made a food desert intentionally. So it was a political act.
Right. So for now, because we kind of grew during the pandemic, we kept it as to where it's going to be closed. We didn't want to, because there's just Mike and I, we couldn't afford to get sick. Even right now, we're very we limit the groups. So if we did have people come on site, there was very small groups. You had to wear a mask, and then the other rule we have is we have to both be there. So if one of us is not there, we're not going to do the tours. So as things are going to start opening up, we are going to allow some of that, but we're going to kind of go really slowly with it. Okay. There was a question way in the back. Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, I'm how much, as you know, I'm from local education. So my question is, how much support do you have from the federal government?
Ooh, that's a lovely question.
You get that one.
You know, it's the federal government that
Yes.
Yeah.
That's always very difficult. I find that, working within our own tribe, we do have grassroots organizations there that do a lot, like, right? It's a great sport like you guys do.
Yep.
So to me, it's not only support from also looking at the nonprofit entities out there, such as like the Nature Service Story.
Mhm.
What I'm trying to do is what I like to do. It's not just about, it's not just the process of raising food, but minor. I applied for the next time started So I guess my question goes back to you.
Yeah. So that is a good question. And that's what like this indigenous food sovereignty is asking that responsibility, because zero, I don't go to my tribe. I don't, because anytime somebody tells me and I ask for some help or additional funding or resources, if they tell me, go to your chapter house, I walk away. Because when I first got out of public health, I went over there and I tried to work in that space. They have their own agenda, and for whatever reason, the chapter house and then the up at the Navajo Nation, they don't talk together either. So I don't even know what their agendas are. I don't know what they're working for. I don't get it. I just don't get it. And because it makes me feel something that, I don't like, that icky feeling, I don't go there. So I don't. I mean, I'd like to, I want to, because they have all the money. The money, any of the funding sources that say we want to go to get it to the tribal government. But I see that they don't have the capacity, the staff capacity to fully implement a program the way it could look like. That's how, from my personal perspective, only from Navajo, that's how I see it. And that's my criticism about it. And so for that reason, they're not ready for it. They are not ready for it. We're all ready for it, but they're not.
One of the issues is many of our tribal governments were created as corporations, and they were created solely to negotiate mineral and land leases, rights, etc., for other corporations to come in and extract. So they don't serve the well-being of the people, and that's what needs to change. So I think our policy is just do it and ask for forgiveness.
Yeah. Yes.
So, at this part of your presentation, what is the goal of your farm? I'm asking the question. I'll say why I'm asking the question honestly.
Okay.
So I'm not being come to this point of view. So a few weeks ago, we were talking about sovereignty and not from a capitalist standpoint, but more as a community. So my question is, what is the goal of your farm? Is it to provide to build it into a business where you like, I guess, use your products as commodities to sell outside of
So it is a business, and I want to be able to make money because, there's bills that I need to pay. And so that's intentionally, we did talk about that, because we were like, should we do a nonprofit? If we do a nonprofit, who is it going to be feasible for us to keep looking for funding? There's just going to be two of us. And then you have to build it out to where you have staff. And then how are we going to do that if we do the farm? Who's going to do the farming part of it? And then we looked at it from the business side, and then we thought, okay, that looks a little bit easier for just the two of us for now. In the future, if we're able to have additional money that comes in, we can take that and move it in, possibly look at doing something with a nonprofit. So that's kind of been how we've looked at it. Did that answer?
So one of the things that we run into, of course, we want it to be more when we approach like in a tribal council where
Yep, yep.
like we'll come in, we'll come in and go, hey, we're gonna do 2,500 blocks a month. We need 5,000 units a month. And they'll go, well, we can't do that. Or that'll be all of our inventory. And then we're also putting other people out to buy the whole thing up. So that's kind of what we're running into. We would like to positively contribute to tribal economy. We're having trouble doing that. We have the money to do it, but we're having trouble finding enough partners, tribal partners, consistent supply so we can get back right back.
Yep.
Well, economies of scale require infrastructure and capital, and we don't have access to those yet. That's something that we need help with. So when you're advocating for programs or you're building programs, think about how to get money into the hands of potential entrepreneurs, farmers, etc. But also we have to be at the council meetings. We have to be at the federal level advocating for streamlining that process. The land is held in trust. So it's not fee simple land. We just can't go purchase it. Some comes available for sale, but then they're asking millions of dollars. That's just out of the reach for the average entrepreneur. So until we address those, we won't be able to address economies of scale.
And then I think the other piece too is, as farmers, some of us, we want to still be able to grow traditionally, which would mean you have one crop and then you'll be done. And then there's other, like I said, Mike and I, when we do the market growing, we're trying to have more food available every 60 days when we do a crop out. And I think part of that would just be really communicating with each other as farmers and saying, well, who's all out there doing this and how can we strategize and make sure that, this farm is getting that, and the next time this person, and just kind of doing that. But we haven't really done a lot of those kind of communications, like in a meaningful way to strategize those things. Thank you.
Okay, I am unmuting and risking feedback so that they can hear me and ask the questions. So I'll speak slowly. There was a question before I got kicked off of internet earlier that had to do with data and wanting to know about the number of producers, and is some of the data just people who have a permit, or is the data having like actual farmers who are farming? There was a question about that, and I have more and I can keep going, but I'll mute.
How I understand it, because the new census, the USDA census survey went out, I think last year. So there's 2021. Yeah. And how I saw the form, because it came to me, it's asking, okay, well, how much land do you farm? What are you farming? Are you livestock, vegetable? And it lists all these things. Are you doing hay? And it's also asking like the amount, the acreage. And so if you fall under a certain amount, then it's going to tell you, okay, we're done with the survey. You're good. So that's how they're kicking and deciding who's the farmer or not. And then it goes into like, okay, well, how much money did you make? So on and so on. That's how I saw the form. So that's how the data was collected. Yeah, it should be available. I think they're still collecting it 2021, 2022.
Not next year.
Yeah.
Every 5 years. It takes you, say, a couple of years to aggregate, understand all the data and stuff.
The next question is from Markel and Begay asking for Coffee Pot Farms. Did you experience any food safety issues at Winslow?
Food safety issues at Winslow. Oh, did we have any health inspectors? From our vegetables? I don't think we did.
If
No.
you're not processing, then it's the responsibility of whoever's purchasing them and processing them. And
Yeah.
selling it.
Well, yeah, no, we didn't have any issues with our vegetables. No.
Next question is from Stacy. Where is the kitchen located with the students?
So one of them is in Window Rock. Right now, there's a coffee company utilizing the space and also a small family. But we're still at blackbirdbrunch.com and we'll announce there when we reopen for other entrepreneurs in the public. There's also a kitchen space available at the Navajo Nation Museum. So if anyone's looking for space, they should utilize either of those spaces.
I'll keep going. We have Stacy again. You said 60% of AZ farmers are Native people, but what is the percentage of land? Do you know what that is?
That I don't know. I don't know that.
Again, the data thing.
I don't know either. Okay. Kate, what is the current, oh, sorry, that person couldn't hear. Sorry, moving on. Okay, that's all, I think.
So we have half an acre that we work on, and my husband Mike, we have an old 1990 Ford truck that he hauls water about 750 gallons a time at one time, and so he's doing that sometimes 3 times a day in the summertime, and so that would kind of come up to like 16 hours. So if you guys have 40-hour work weeks, 2 of those days are for just hauling water.
Before, and I hopefully she can expand on ethical business practices. Materials that you choose, have available, still use, how important it is to build that into
I think it's one of the most important aspects because that's the end product. And very often we're not thinking about the end product, especially when you're studying business or you're going through business school. They're talking about the profit margin and the profit margin at all cost, even the cost of the mental health of your employees, the cost of the environment, and the cost of the health of your consumer. So I think it's the most important aspect is the end result of what you're producing, what you're providing, what you're selling. So I hope that answered your question.
There's another one in the back. Yep.
Thank you. Go back to the question earlier about federal government how do you navigate the
So I know that if you're doing, well, you have to get permission with the RDBO,
Yeah,
right?
Well, on Navajo, it's different.
On Navajo, yeah. And so you have to go through a process and you have to show them all the questions that you're going to ask and how the data is going to be used. So there's that process. The other part that you're asking about is, I'm trying to think. Because as entrepreneurs, I know you can collect customer data, right, for yourself that you're going to use to make improvements on your service or your product. But that's you, that's your own data that you're going to use. And I know that we do that, you know, we collect our own data on what we're going to do. Like, for example, if, you know, people didn't buy this type of vegetable, you know, then I'm not going to have it there. Or if somebody said, you know, can you grow this, whatever. So you're going to change that out. But that's my data. That's how I would use that. Did that kind of answer your question?
Yeah, and something else I was trying to get at is that funding out available. Obviously, that's a choice you have.
Well, yeah, your choice is, you work with them or you just decide you're not going to work with them. That's it. Yeah.
We just do the best we can, and we try to garner support from the community, because that voice is going to keep us, you know, they're going to advocate for us and say, hey, we need this program, and they'll usually respond to that, hopefully. Otherwise, you just, you know, sometimes when I'm doing this work, they're like, hey, you can't do that. And I said, okay, well, tell me how I can. What's the process? Because oftentimes it's not even written yet. The codes are just missing. So with Blackbird Brunch, they came in and said, you need 2 restrooms. Why? My capacity is 16 seats. What is this? Where's the code? Show me the line in the code that says I have to have 2 restrooms for 16 seats. It didn't exist. And it was just kind of that pairing with the tribal government, like, okay, well, until we figure it out, just know we're watching you. Okay. That's about the process. Question.
We just talk.
Yeah, invite us into the conversations, invite us into those rooms and those meetings where these discussions are already happening. We need that Indigenous perspective at all levels. Yep.
Like social media has a lot to it.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. And it's funny because like our newspaper, I guess, would be Facebook. Like that's where all Indigenous communities are kind of tied together. And then like just through sharing of memes and jokes and information about powwows is the beginning conversation. What I learned, because I started working on Indigehub 6 years ago, and I learned that there's a level of trust you have to gain before they'll even let you in these spaces and conversations. So do your due diligence, do the footwork. You can't just burst in and say, we're going to do this. Yeah, because they're going to like, no, who are you? Who's your mom? Who are you related to? What are you doing here? How did you get, what do you want? So my pilot space ran for a year, and I couldn't get people in the door because they're like, again, they knew me, but they're like, what are you doing? Why are you doing it? So I spent the next 6 years and hundreds of thousands of miles, and I've went to those communities, and I talked to to entrepreneurs and leaders and tribal council members and just individuals. And I asked, what do you need? What does your community need? What will work? What does it look like? Oftentimes we're not asked. People just show up, these NGOs show up and they're like, we're doing this. And then it just sits there idle. There's been no move forward movement. And that's because they haven't asked those communities what they want, what will work. Because again, we have red tape, we have layers, we have federal, then state, and then tribal, and then we have the relatives in the area. All of that has to come into consideration. Unless you know your environment, you're not going to be impactful. So it's going to take boots on the ground, walking and talking and introducing yourself and learning how that community operates to have any results.
And I'm glad that she brought that up, because in coming into this space, like I said, I didn't grow up doing this kind of work as a farmer, but it seems like, there's programs out there and they're telling you, oh no, this is what you need. And this is the classes, this is what we want to give you. But when it comes down to it, it's like your infrastructure
doesn't apply to us.
Yeah. And so it's like, I don't even know how to get that. There's this other process I got to do. So then you end up juggling all these things. And so if you're going to work with us, come visit us, come see where we're at, what we have to work with. Then you'll have a better understanding of what you're capable, you'll know what you're going to be able to provide us. Or you decide, okay, well, no, this is going to be too hard. You decide that, and that's okay. Either way works.
If people come to visit you, should they pay you for your time?
Yes, I think they should.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because you're taking away from my growing.
In time, yeah. I mean, payment comes in many different forms, and sometimes it comes in reciprocation, but always reciprocation.
You guys have been a good audience. Thank you for coming. We appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely.